Tonight on episode 98 of the Stratosphere Lounge, we are doing the Big Lie edition. I did a afterburner on the Big Lie of Tomorrowland. I thought, there's other big lies out there, so let's get to it. I think we can knock this off. I know we can knock this off in one. The Big Lie edition, things that people talk about as either on our side it can't get figured out, but mostly what the left generally tries to throw at us. So let's go through the big lies based in order. We had a comment section from last week, and we've got another one today, so I just took my favorites, but these are pretty much the top-rated one. Let's start with Patrick Dillon. The lie that the New Deal policies of FDR brought us out of the Depression. There are people who know more about this history than I do, but there was the overall economy of the United States at that time was a very boom-bust kind of an economy, even more so than today. What is not common knowledge, although it's been popularized by guys like Len Beck, was that in the 1920s, before the Great Depression, there was a virtually identical situation, a sharp collapse of the market, followed by just a gigantic, enormous, catastrophic recession. And instead of FDR at the helm, we had Calvin Coolidge, I think the most underrated American president. And Coolidge did the opposite of what FDR was going to do later. Coolidge looked at the situation and he cut federal spending in half. He cut it in half. And within a year, unemployment had gone from something like 25% to like 2%. Because he cut taxes in half is what he did. And federal spending and taxes and all the rest, he just basically got the government out of the way. And it would basically took the economy's shackles off. And what was basically a 2-year recession, and it was pretty much over. When the same thing happened to FDR a decade later, he did the exact opposite. He basically got the government involved in everything with these public works programs. So they're taxing people to take money from businesses and send it to Washington so they could spend it on the alphabet soups of the WGA and all these other different things, and businesses have their hands tied, and so nobody's hiring, and it took it into a 11-year depression. It's just simply obvious. It's not like we don't know, and it's not like we only know half of the story. It's like, well, we tried one thing, we don't know what the other half was. We tried one thing, it was an out-of-the-park success. We tried the other thing, it's the greatest economic catastrophe in world history, in American history, in world history, yes. The Great Depression. And it was a result of all of this kind of idea of government controlling things. When Roosevelt started with this whole thing, we just had to scramble to make jobs, and the money we took to make the jobs could have gone to making actual jobs that paid and created new wealth and then made profits, and then the economy would have grown. But no, we got people out there shoveling, road beds to put in a railroad or something that we didn't really need. And it's an astonishing thing. So no, he did not get us out of the Depression. How can you say that? I mean, it took 9 years to get out of the Depression. Even if you're claiming it as a win, that's to suggest that we would have had, what would it have been otherwise, a 25-year depression? That's ridiculous. By the way, it's an interesting thing to come back to, because I just had this connection in my head. I never thought of it this way before. But this is an interesting thing to think about. This will make sense to pilots, and maybe non-pilots will get where I'm going with this. We talked earlier about a stall, an aerodynamic stall, where you pull back enough on the stick or on the control yoke, and you're basically raising the nose so much that finally the angle of attack is so high that the plane stops flying and the laminar flow departs and the plane plummets down to the ground. But the thing that nobody understands about a stall, certainly in modern airplanes, is that an airplane can't get into a stall unless you command it to be in a stall, and once it's in a stall, it will fly itself right out of the stall unless you have this death grip on the stick. In other words, if you want to recover from a stall in a just a conventional trainer like a Cessna 172, you have to work to keep that airplane in a stall. You have to have your hands on the controls and really force it back. Once it gets into a stall, if you just let go of everything, the plane will just come right out of the stall. There'll be a phugoid kind of a thing, and after a couple of oscillations, you'll be flying just fine. The only way you can stall an airplane into the ground and kill yourself is if you continue to pull back on this stick and keep it stalled. Or if you pull out too aggressively, or if mostly it's just people just panic and they hold back on the stick. And I think that's basically what happened with the economy in the Great Depression. Instead of just recovering from the stall, which is what Coolidge did, or just leaving it alone, in which case you probably would have been out of it in 3 or 4 years tops, they kept inputting the wrong control inputs into the economy and kept the economy stalled for a decade. The similar situation happened with that Air France flight. I did an afterburner about this called Into the Sea. That Air France flight that disappeared over the South Atlantic was caused by something that's I simply can't believe it happened. The Airbus aircraft is designed in such a way, I can't believe I said that. I think I might have said this very recently too. It's designed in such a way that if the pilot is commanding the plane to dive and the co-pilot is commanding the plane to climb, then the airplane averages them both out. We'll just stay level. It's insane. I mean, think about that from an avoidance point of view. Let's say you're flying through the clouds and you see a mountain up ahead and you turn to your co-pilot and say, "What's that mountain goat doing up here in the clouds?" Well, if the pilot says, "My God, let's turn left," and the co-pilot says, "My God, let's turn right," the plane just flies straight ahead. It's madness. But that airplane was a perfectly healthy Airbus A321, I want to say, and they flew it into the ocean because the airplane was not allowed to recover and was not allowed to fly away. They kept it in a stall the whole time. I think that's exactly what happened with the Great Depression. And people know more about the details of this than I do, but to me it's pretty clear. Coolidge said, "Hey, you know what? Put the nose down. Let's get some speed back up here." If they just left it alone, it would have been a 4-year thing. Coolidge's plan made it a 2-year thing, and Roosevelt's got the stick all the way back for 11 years and just basically stalls the thing into the ground. And finally, the war spending was so great that even the socialist policies of FDR couldn't keep it in the ground. Yeah, that's what I think anyway.